Claire adjusted her seatbelt and leaned her head against the window, smiling as the rocky landscape of Joshua Tree stretched out before her. It was her idea to take one last adventure before the baby came. 7 months pregnant, she still had that same spirited energy Daniel fell in love with. He glanced over at her from the driver's seat, catching the peaceful look on her face. "Still excited?" he asked, squeezing her hand gently. She nodded, resting her other hand on her belly, feeling the baby kick. "More than ever," she said softly. They turned off the main road and onto a dusty, unmarked path that Daniel had researched months ago. It wasn't an official campsite, but it was far enough from the tourist trails that they'd have complete privacy. That's what Claire had wanted, a quiet, serene spot to sit under the stars and feel close to nature before her life became all diapers and midnight feedings. The SUV rumbled along the uneven ground, winding between Joshua trees and scattered boulders until they reached the clearing. It was perfect, secluded, scenic, and bathed in golden light from the setting sun. Daniel parked the car, stepped out, and stretched. Claire followed more slowly, careful with her footing. He helped her down, then opened the trunk to begin unloading their gear: tent, cooler, camping chairs, a folded blanket, and a worn paperback Claire had been reading aloud every night. They worked together, laughing, taking breaks, and occasionally pausing when Claire needed to catch her breath. The sun dipped lower behind the rocks, painting the sky with streaks of orange and violet. By the time the tent was pitched and the firewood stacked, darkness had settled in. They sat on the blanket near the fire pit, eating sandwiches and sipping from bottles of cold water. The silence around them was vast, but not empty, filled with the sound of crickets, a distant owl, and the soft rustle of the wind through dry brush. Claire leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder as the stars began to appear above them, one by one. "I think she's going to love the outdoors," she whispered. "We'll bring her here when she's old enough. We'll teach her how to hike, camp, and build a fire." Daniel smiled, kissing her temple. "She's already got your wild spirit. I can feel it." As the fire crackled beside them, Claire pulled out her journal and began to write. She'd started a habit of writing letters to their unborn daughter, little messages and thoughts she hoped to share one day. Daniel leaned back, hands behind his head, staring at the stars. He wasn't much of a writer, but he was a dreamer, and right then, he was dreaming about the future. About fatherhood. About watching Claire cradle their baby in the hospital room. About the three of them standing together in this very desert a few years from now. The wind picked up slightly, causing the fire to flicker. Claire closed her journal and smiled at her husband. "Let's go inside," she said, rubbing her back. "She's getting heavy." They climbed into the tent, zipped it shut, and lay down side by side on their sleeping bags. Daniel reached out and placed a hand on her belly. A soft kick responded. He chuckled. "Yep, definitely a camper." They fell asleep in each other's arms, surrounded by stars, unaware that this peaceful night would be their last. That the wind would soon erase their footprints. That their voices would fade from the desert, and that no one would hear from them again. By morning, the desert was quiet. Their SUV remained parked, their gear untouched, the tent still standing. But Daniel and Claire were gone, without a sound, without a clue. The heat was oppressive, even in the early morning. Travis Morgan, a solo hiker and amateur photographer, tightened the straps of his backpack and sipped from his water bottle. He wasn't new to Joshua Tree, he had explored most of the main trails years ago. But now, in search of something different, something unspoiled, he ventured off the well-worn paths and onto an overgrown, almost forgotten route he'd heard about on a local hiking forum. Supposedly, it led to an untouched canyon filled with unusual rock formations. Very few had dared to explore it. That was exactly what attracted him. The landscape grew rougher with each step. Thick brush, crumbling rocks, and hidden dips in the terrain made the hike slow and punishing. The sun beat down relentlessly, casting shimmering heat waves across the desert floor. Cactus spines scratched at his arms. Sweat soaked his clothes. But Travis kept going. He wanted a shot no one else had captured, a frame worthy of a magazine cover. About 3 miles in, he stopped for a break under the sliver of shade cast by a tall rock. As he bent to check his map, something caught his eye a few feet away, just beyond a twisted Joshua tree, partially hidden beneath a scatter of stones and dry brush. It looked like fabric. Curious, Travis stepped over cautiously, pushing branches aside. What he found made his breath catch. It was a backpack. Old. Faded. Weathered by years of sun and sand. The zipper was corroded, but still intact. Half buried and coated with dust, it looked like it had been there for a long time. At first, he thought it was just someone's forgotten gear, but something about it felt wrong. Out of place. He brushed off more dirt and gently unzipped the bag. Inside were remnants of a life frozen in time. A cracked smartphone with a spider-webbed screen. A soft, yellowed baby onesie, neatly folded. A metal water bottle, empty and rusted. And near the bottom, a wedding band, dulled by the elements, engraved with tiny letters, C and D, always. Travis stared at the items, a sick feeling twisting in his stomach. He remembered hearing something, years ago, something about a couple who had gone missing in Joshua Tree. A pregnant woman and her husband. It had been on the news, briefly, then faded away like most unsolved stories do. Could this be connected? He reached for the phone, trying to power it on, but the battery was long dead. Still, the lock screen was faintly visible under the cracked glass. It showed the date, October 3, 2014, the day the couple had vanished. Travis sat down on a nearby rock, suddenly unsure of what to do. The desert around him was silent except for the wind. He looked up at the ridges above, then back down the canyon behind him. If the backpack had stayed hidden this long, what else might be nearby? He marked the GPS location on his phone and took several photos of the items without disturbing them further. Then, carefully, he re-zipped the bag and placed it back where he'd found it, making sure it wouldn't blow away or be further exposed. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't just a case of someone losing their gear. It felt heavier than that, like the desert was finally trying to give up a secret it had kept buried for too long. Travis turned around and began the long hike back with a new urgency in his steps. As he moved through the wilderness, every rock, every shadow seemed to whisper fragments of a story that had once vanished without a trace. He didn't know it yet, but his discovery was about to open the door to a mystery that had haunted two families, and baffled authorities, for over a decade. The desert was alive with motion as search teams returned to the place Travis had marked on his GPS. Within 24 hours of reporting the backpack, authorities, forensic experts, and park rangers swarmed the remote area. Helicopters hovered overhead. Drones scanned the terrain. After more than a decade of silence, Joshua Tree was speaking again, and this time, people were listening. The backpack's discovery led investigators to a dry, narrow ravine hidden behind a cluster of jagged rocks, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The path was steep and unstable, eroded by time and wind, with loose gravel threatening to slide beneath every step. But as the team carefully climbed down, what they found sent a chill through even the most seasoned among them. Near the base of the ravine, half covered in debris and brush, were two human skeletons, side by side, as if they had been lying there together for years. Bones bleached by the sun, clothing torn and faded beyond recognition, and nearby, a small fabric bundle that made even the toughest officers pause. Wrapped in what remained of a t-shirt was a tiny set of baby clothes, clean, unused, still carefully folded. There was no infant body, but its presence was haunting. Nearby, a weather-worn journal lay open, protected beneath a small pile of stones. The pages were fragile, but the ink was still visible, the handwriting neat and emotional. It was Claire's. In the journal, she detailed their final days, how she had slipped on loose rocks during a short hike, falling down the ravine and breaking her ankle. Daniel had tried to climb down to help her, but the terrain was too steep. With no cell service and no one nearby, he decided to stay with her and wait for help. Days passed. Their food ran out. Water ran low. Claire wrote to their unborn daughter every day, leaving letters filled with love, apologies, and fading hope. Daniel rationed what they had, tried signaling planes with a mirror, even attempted to hike out once, but returned bruised and exhausted, unwilling to leave her alone again. In the last entry, Claire's handwriting was shaky, fading. She wrote, "If anyone finds this, please tell our baby we loved her. We wanted to bring her home. We fought, but the desert is stronger than we are. I'm not afraid anymore. We're together. That's enough." The journal ended there. Forensic analysis later confirmed the remains were indeed Daniel and Claire. The evidence matched the clothing and items recovered from the original investigation. The wedding ring in the backpack, the phone, the journal, all pieces of a long-forgotten puzzle finally coming together. Yet, amidst the heartbreak, one strange detail stood out to the investigators. There were footprints, faint, but distinct, leading into the ravine from another direction. They didn't match any known search team from the time, nor any official ranger patrols. And Claire's journal made one cryptic reference near the middle pages: "A man came yesterday. He stood on the ridge and looked down at us. We begged him for help. He didn't say a word. Just turned and walked away. Who was he? Was he real, or a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and heatstroke?" That one question stirred new speculation and reopened old wounds. But for now, the focus remained on honoring Daniel and Claire. After 11 long years, the truth, or at least part of it, had finally emerged from the shadows of the desert. They hadn't run away. They hadn't vanished without a trace. They had loved each other until the very end. And the desert, brutal and silent, had kept their secret, until it could no longer hold it in. Even with the mystery of Daniel and Claire's fate partially resolved, one chilling detail kept investigators awake at night: the reference in Claire's journal to a silent man who appeared on the ridge above them. A man who saw them, heard them, and walked away. The page describing him was brief, almost hesitant, as though Claire herself had questioned whether he was real. But the words were there, scrawled in her own hand: "A man came. He stood on the rocks, watching. I screamed until my voice cracked. Daniel waved both arms. We begged. He didn't move, didn't help. Then he left." That line reignited interest not only from police but from the public. News of the discovery spread quickly. Social media platforms lit up with speculation. Conspiracy theorists, amateur detectives, and desert survivalists dissected every detail. Who was the man Claire described? Why didn't he call for help? Did he even exist? Authorities reopened the original case file and dug through years of tips and sightings, some of which had been dismissed or forgotten. One ranger, now retired, recalled hearing something strange during the original search: reports from campers of a lone man wandering the park's less traveled paths. He never spoke. He never approached anyone. Just wandered in the distance and disappeared when anyone got too close. At the time, it had seemed like just another ghost story in the desert. But now, it felt different. A few older hikers shared eerily similar accounts online. Stories of encountering a man with weather-beaten clothes and hollow eyes who stared for a moment too long, then turned and vanished. No one had ever interacted with him directly. No photos existed, but the descriptions were oddly consistent. Some believed the silent figure had simply been another lost soul, someone surviving off the grid. Others suspected something more sinister: was he responsible for other disappearances in the region? Had he followed Daniel and Claire, watched them struggle, and chosen to do nothing? As investigators combed through reports from the time of the couple's disappearance, they came across a curious 911 call that had never been traced. It came from a payphone outside a small gas station on the edge of the desert, placed the morning after Daniel and Claire were last seen. The call lasted only 15 seconds. A man's voice whispered, "They're out there, she's hurt." Then silence. No name. No location. The call had been logged, but with no follow-up or context. It had been dismissed as a prank. Now, it didn't feel like a prank at all. Police tried to enhance the recording, but the voice was faint, and the background noise, wind, maybe traffic, made it hard to analyze. Still, the possibility that someone had seen them and chosen to stay silent opened an entirely new chapter in the case. Theories spun like dust in the wind. Some thought the man may have suffered from mental illness, unable to understand the urgency of the couple's cries. Others suspected he had something to hide and feared discovery. A few proposed that he was a recluse who simply didn't care. Then there were those who went further, claiming he was not of this world, a desert spirit, or a punishment sent by the land itself. Authorities didn't comment on the wilder theories, but they issued a quiet appeal. If anyone remembered seeing or encountering a strange man near Joshua Tree in October 2014, they were asked to come forward. No questions, no blame, just the truth. But no one came. The desert, as always, kept its secrets well. The man, if he was ever real, had vanished as surely as Daniel and Claire had, leaving behind only questions, footprints, and a single agonizing sentence in a faded journal. A soft wind rolled through the canyons of Joshua Tree as the families of Daniel and Claire gathered at the place now unofficially known as Claire's Rest. There were no headstones, no polished marble markers, only desert stone, wildflowers brought by mourners, and a single wooden cross placed carefully at the foot of the ravine. The silence was heavy but peaceful, filled with reverence, not fear. After 11 years of questions, the truth, however tragic, had finally come to light. Claire's mother, Ellen, stood quietly with trembling hands wrapped around a folded printout of the last journal entry. Her voice wavered as she read aloud to the small group. "If anyone finds this, please tell our baby we loved her. We wanted to bring her home. We fought, but the desert is stronger than we are. I'm not afraid anymore. We're together. That's enough." By the end, there wasn't a dry eye among them. The story had touched thousands. News outlets across the country had picked it up, highlighting not just the tragedy, but the love that had endured through pain, fear, and uncertainty. Claire's words had become a symbol of resilience. Schools, churches, even strangers who had never met the couple sent letters to the family expressing sympathy, hope, and admiration. The National Park Service, after a formal vote, agreed to quietly mark the area. While not a tourist site, out of respect, it would be preserved, protected from development or erasure. Rangers placed a small plaque nearby with a simple inscription, "In memory of Claire and Daniel, lost but never forgotten. Love endures." Hikers now occasionally stopped by the edge of the canyon, some leaving flowers, others a note or a small toy for the child who never got the chance to live. The baby onesie found in the backpack had been framed by the family and displayed next to the wedding photo of the couple, Daniel in his tuxedo, Claire glowing and laughing in her white dress, the beginnings of the life they'd planned together shining in their eyes. Despite the closure, one thing remained unresolved: the man Claire had written about. Investigators kept the case open, quietly monitoring for any new tips, but nothing ever surfaced. No one claimed to be the figure she saw. No one admitted to the phone call from the gas station. Perhaps he had vanished into the vastness of the desert, or perhaps, as many came to believe, he was never fully real at all. Some saw him as a symbol, the embodiment of how close rescue had come, how cruel fate could be. Others thought he might have been a real person burdened with guilt, unable to face the consequences of his silence. But in the end, the families chose not to dwell on him. He was not the ending of their story, love was. Daniel and Claire had stayed together when it would have been easier to give up. They had held on to hope until the very last breath. They hadn't abandoned their child, they had fought for her, with every ounce of strength they had left. That, their families decided, was what truly mattered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the desert in warm gold and orange, Ellen placed a small, hand-knitted blanket at the foot of the cross. It had been meant for the baby's crib. Now, it would stay here, a quiet offering to the wind, the sand, and the memory of a family torn away but reunited in rest. And for a moment, the desert was still. As if it, too, was finally at peace.